Calgary Crowfoot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise on adjournment business and to have, or at least seek, a little bit more accountability from the government for the response to a question that I asked in question period, I think a couple of weeks ago now. I questioned them about the deficit that hadn't yet been tabled, and I simply asked whether or not it would be, if they could give assurance to the House that it wouldn't be higher than the projected deficit that Justin Trudeau submitted in the last financial update that was tabled in the House under his when he was Prime Minister. And some will recall that the chaos around that. I mean, the finance minister resigned 2 days or so before it was to be tabled. Nobody, for those of us that were here then, we didn't even know if there was going to be a budget that day. It was chaotic. There were boxes, you know, they were. Nobody knew if we were even going to get a briefing in a lockup over it. It was delayed. There was no speech. When we did receive the budget, there was no signature, no name. It was like an anonymous budget just dropped by a random Liberal minister that was called upon to do it. The finance minister resigned over that budget, or had resigned already. The Prime Minister resigned not long after that. So the issue then was the deficit. The deficit was so big then that nobody was willing to take responsibility for it, and their own cabinet and caucus had decided enough is enough, and that it was time for to bring in somebody that could actually balance the budget, or at least control spending, restore fiscal sanity. But as it turned out, Mr. Speaker, it actually got worse. They tabled the first budget they had was more than twice the last budget that was so bad that it resulted in resignations. So in response to that, this is what the member said. He wouldn't give assurance that the budget would, the balance would, that it wouldn't be more than $30 billion in the deficit. It would turn out to be $67 billion. But he said, "Oh, Mr. Speaker, we are building big, we're building bold, we're building across the country." Mr. Speaker, what are they even talking about? What are they building? They're not building anything. They talk about the need for energy infrastructure. They talk about the need for all kinds of infrastructure. They've been campaigning and talking about this since 2015 without doing anything. Here we are, over a year after the Prime Minister said, we're going to build at unimaginable speeds, major projects. They gave themselves extraordinary new powers to approve new major projects. None have been approved. None are being built. They are not building big across the country. They are just talking about it. And it's like each time they're having an out-of-body experience when they say, "Whoa, if only we had a pipeline, or so we could be an energy superpower." They had one on the table that was approved. The very first thing they did in 2015 was cancel the Northern Gateway pipeline. Then they chased out the proponent of the Energy East pipeline. Then they chased out the private sector builder of the Trans Mountain pipeline. So this government has no track record on building anything, Mr. Speaker, and the budget that they brought in is twice as bad as Trudeau's final budget, the one that triggered his resignation.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the intervention from my colleague from Calgary Crowfoot. I just want to remind the House that our government's focus remains clear and disciplined, and we're controlling what we can control. And that means maintaining fiscal sustainability while making targeted high-impact investments for Canadians, maintaining our fiscal anchors, and ensuring that every dollar spent on behalf of Canadians supports growth, resilience, and improving the well-being of Canadians. That's the direction we need right now, and it's in the context of global changes that we are witnessing, which are sudden and, I would say, unprecedented. Global economies in more than a year into a profound rupture, characterized by the trade decisions made by the U.S. administration. Economic security, industrial policy, and geopolitical competition are increasingly shaping investment, trade, and financial decisions. And of course, the recent conflict in the Middle East, which has disrupted key shipping routes and damaged energy infrastructure, has pushed energy prices higher, underscoring the fragility of global supply chains and adding to already elevated uncertainty. And yet, despite this environment, the government is delivering an $11.5 billion improvement in the projected 25-26 budgetary balance. And this strength carries into future years, improving the budgetary balance relative to last year's budget by an average of $10.7 billion per year from 26-27 to 29-30 before new measures. And I'll just note in addition that our deficit to GDP ratio, one of the key fiscal anchors, is well below the G7 average, as shown on the page 12 of the Spring Economic Update. And fortunately, this fiscal room allows the government to improve affordability and raise Canadian standard of living through targeted and responsible policy measures, particularly in the areas of fuel, food, and housing affordability. And this is a move that started in the budget of 2025, and indeed before then, with some income tax cuts that we were so happy to get the support on the other side from. And it marked a strategic shift in the government's management of public finances, focused on expanding federal capital spending to mobilize investments while maintaining fiscal responsibility. Our budget 2025, as you know, set out a clear plan to build the strongest economy in the G7, and we're moving towards that with very strong growth rates projected in relation to other G7 countries, and again, the strongest fiscal position in the G7, in particular with a debt to GDP ratio well below that of our G7 peers. Our plan remains rooted in fiscal responsibility, not for its own sake, but to create the capacity to invest our long-term economic strength and greater self-reliance. And therefore, I just want to mention again, there are two fiscal anchors, balancing operating spending with revenues by 28-29, and maintaining a declining deficit to GDP ratio, both of which we are attaining. We also remain committed to the disciplined implementation of Budget 2025 efficiency measures, including the comprehensive expenditure review, which together with other measures in Budget 2025 totals $60 billion in savings and revenues over the last 5 years. And so we're now in the implementation phase, and the focus is now turning towards targeted or ongoing reviews, beginning with efforts to rein in spending on external management and other consulting services. These aren't easy decisions, they're challenging, but they're necessary actions, and we'll continue to support our objective of spending less to invest more. In these serious times, with these serious geopolitical headwinds, it is important to make the targeted investments, control what we can control, maintain our fiscal anchors, attend to the affordability and the economic needs of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Maintaining their fiscal anchors, Mr. Speaker? Is this Parliamentary Secretary serious? He wasn't here, I guess. Maybe he was not here to see how many fiscal anchors have been declared and discarded since 2015. Even the one that he cited in his remarks, he possibly misspoke, but he said that they have declining debt to GDP ratio. They don't. Look at the bud. It's right there in the statement. They got rid of that fiscal anchor. That's not the current one. So, he talked about how giving them, congratulating themselves on their deficit being $11 billion lower than what they forecast 5 months ago. Mr. Speaker, that's like congratulating themselves for taking off the carbon tax after they put it on in the first place. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm running out of time, but the standard of living, Mr. Speaker, it's unchanged in 10 years with these guys.